Hi guys. So today I'm going to be breaking our tutorial into 3 short videos going over a hand, body, and eye. Today we're going to be starting with a hand. What I'm going to be using is 2 different markers so that way you can follow along. We'll be drawing first the structural or skeleton of the hand, and then we'll be using another color to show the muscles and folds of the skin. So I'm going to be using my left hand as my model and my right hand as my drawing hand since I'm right hand dominant. In this example, I'm going to be using a peace sign, and I'm going to be starting off with my palm. I'm not going to be thinking about my fingers until a little later, but we're going to look about the shape of the palm. So I like to break things down into geometric shapes, especially with the palm. So I'm going to look at this line here where my wrist is, how the line goes up to my finger, how it cuts across here, and then becomes like a diagonal line from here to here, and then closes with this last line here. I'll show it up here as well. So we have the line where my 2 fingers are. We have the straight line coming down to my wrist. We have the line where my wrist is, the diagonal line where my 2 fingers fold, and the last line that connects down to my wrist. So it should look something like this. Doesn't look like a hand, but that's okay. So now that I have my palm, now I have to think about my fingers. So I have to think about my knuckles. Some of you may notice this and some may not, but your thumb only has 2 joints. We have where our main knuckle is that connects it to our palm, and then we have our other knuckle right here where it bends. We have 1 and 2. Versus if you look at your other fingers, we again have your main knuckle that your finger is attached to, your other knuckle where it bends here, and then this last little joint right here at the very tip of your finger. So again, we have 1, 2, and 3. So to get us started, I'm going to represent each joint with a circle, because if it's a circle, that means that I can move whatever's attached to it. Anytime we ever do a bone, I'm going to represent that as a straight line. Let's get started. I'm going to get started with my thumb first since that's in the front. And if we look at our line here, my thumb is somewhere in the middle. So I'm going to be drawing a circle right about here. I'm going to continue looking at my other fingers. Looks like I have these 2 up here, so I'm going to represent that with a circle here and a circle here. With the 2 that are bent, I'm going to show that here and here. Doesn't look like a hand yet, but it'll get there. And like I said earlier, we're going to use joints as circles and bones that doesn't bend as a line. So our next step is, again, going back to my thumb. I'm going to draw a little line, slightly diagonal, up. I'm going to continue this process through the other fingers. Now, as I said earlier, the thumb only has 2 joints, so I'm only going to do 1 more circle for my thumb. I'm going to continue that same process over here. Now, the difference between wide circles like this versus up here, these fingers are going straight versus these, which are bending. So we have to think about our overlap. Going back to my thumb, we're going to draw a line from this last little part of my thumb that doesn't bend. Let's see. And then we'll continue with that process here. Now, like I said, these 2 fingers are bent. So to show that, I'm going to have the lines come down towards the thumb, since the thumb is overlapping and holding those 2 fingers. Since we're done drawing those joints on here, we're going to finish up the joints with our other 4 fingers. And then the last part, that last little nub of our finger. Okay. Probably doesn't look like a hand, probably looks like a lot of shapes and circles and lines, and that's normal. Especially whenever you're first learning how to draw things, it's very important to understand how do I break something very complex down to where I can follow certain steps. I'm going to switch over to a green marker now. This way we can focus on muscles and the bending and wrinkles. So I'm going to turn my camera a little bit more so you can focus on this part. So I'm going to use green to overlap on this. And again, I'm going to go back to using my model. I'm going to start with my thumb. If you look a little closely at your hand, you have this muscle here. Anytime that your hand is flat, it doesn't protrude as much. But if I were to bring it in, it very quickly bulges and protrudes forward. And you can also start to see the folds of our skin and muscle. You can see the same things when you close your hands like this, where you see where each joint, there's a line where it folds. So we're going to start with the thumb. And I'm going to look at this muscle here. I'm not going to so much look at the wrinkle, but I am going to see where does this curve happen in association to my knuckle. So it looks like it's coming right about the edge of where my circle is. So I'm just going to make a curve as such. Next, what I'm going to do is continue underneath my thumb and work on the top and outline. Since we have this wrinkle here, there should be a line. And what you can do is always go back and erase. Knuckle, knuckle, and. So I'm going to erase this green line earlier. And I'm going to go back to these two fingers. This will be a little bit easier. So on my hand specifically, I have a little bit more meat on my upper part of my fingers that are a little bit fatter. And as my fingers go up, it's a little bit thinner. So to help represent that, I'm going to come from one circle where the bottom knuckle attaches us to the palm. I'm going to kind of do a slight curve up to my next circle, which is my other knuckle. Should look something like this. Then I'm going to come up to the next circle, get a little thinner out, and I'm just going to finish off that. I'm going to do the same thing on my second finger. Okay. Looks a little wonky right there. Luckily, if you're using a pencil, you can erase things, so it's okay. All right, a little bit better. One thing I will point out, and a lot of people have a tendency of always drawing a V instead of a U on this. If you look at your palm and you spread your fingers out, you'll notice that the skin between right here looks like a U. But if you start to close your hands, it starts to look like a V. Whenever I draw this part, even though I can see that when they're close it looks like a V, I look a little bit closer and I see that little bit of skin right here, which makes it look like a tiny little U. So that's how I'm going to show with these two fingers connected. So I'm going to just right about here, not at the bottom, but just a little bit above, a tiny little U. I'm going to finish out this hand, and then I can show you when I erase everything how that looks. Looks a little crazy right now, but as I said, I'm going to go back and I'm going to erase some of the lines so you can start to see what does this look like after I'm done. Now, after you're done erasing, of course, I'm using a dry erase marker on this one. You can always go back and clean up some of your lines that you may have erased. The other thing you can always go back and do is at the wrinkles where your fingers fold. All right, so that is the beginning stages of a hand. I know my fingers look a little wonky up here. I'll admit it looks weird, but if I think too hard, it never comes out right. But if I think very less, then it somehow comes out right. That's just how it works. So anyway, these are the stepping stones of how to, again, take something very complex, even just as hands, and how to break it down and come up with drawings. The more and more you do this process, you won't have to do every single step that I showed, nor will you have to do as many details. You'll just quickly know, okay, the shape of my hand is about here, my fingers go in this direction, and then you can start building up your layers really quickly. And it won't take you as long. So always use your own hands as a model, because if you're right hand dominant like me, you can use your left hand to kind of do different kind of signs. So if you're holding something, if you're gripping, if you have your hand spread out, use your model, your hand, to help you start practicing how that looks. Again, if you have any questions on this tutorial, please let me know. But other than that, I hope you have a wonderful day and watch the next tutorial. Okay, bye-bye.